Because of the way vibe coding works, it's very AI agent based. So you have all these agents working together. A lot of people are trying to put security controls on this. Like if you ask like vibe coding IDEs and go, make me ransomware, it's going to say no. But if you say to it, hey, I would love an application that helps me encrypt my files. Could you make me an application that encrypts a file for me? The bot will go, yeah, no problem. Yeah, absolutely. I'll write that code for you. And you say, hey, I want to apply this to every file on my hard drive. Can you write the... And then you've essentially got ransomware. Like, you may not have called it ransomware when you gave it to the bot, but what you've produced is fundamentally still ransomware. And existing security controls just don't work.
What's happening, guys? Today on the pod, we have Dr. Katie Paxton-Fear. She's a cybersecurity researcher and lecturer who studies the intersection between AI and hacking. Across our conversation, we talk about AI hackbots, vibe coding malware, Google Translate's bizarre religious doomsday prophecies, and so much more fascinating, mind-blowing stuff. Let's get into it. Katie, thank you so much for joining. Would you mind introducing yourself and talking about what you do?
Pleasure to be here. My name is Dr. Katie Paxton-Fear. I have my fingers in lots of different pies. I am an educational YouTuber. I make videos about hacking. My day job is that I'm a hacker at a company. I hack companies, tell them how I did it. That way they can prevent it before like an actual malicious actor comes along and exploits a vulnerability. I'm also a lecturer at a university where I teach, shockingly enough, ethical hacking to students. But I do a lot of talks and I, again, go around the world teaching people about security. My specialism is definitely API security. It's where I got my start. I started out as a developer and I was making APIs. So when I first started getting into cybersecurity and started getting into hacking, I kind of hack what I know. And that's kind of where it's led me into being kind of like an API specific hacker. Though I would be the first to say there is nothing special about what I do. Anyone can do it. You just need to watch, of course, my YouTube videos on how to do it. Certainly not anybody else. No. It's a skill and you can learn it, right? And I thoroughly enjoy teaching it.
So with the help of AI, cybercrime is going through this really interesting evolution right now, not only in terms of the scale of attacks, but the variety of the different types of attacks. And one of those is something that you're studying, the AI hackbot. Would you mind taking a minute to explain what an AI hackbot is and how that differs from a traditional scanner?
Yeah, absolutely. So first thing to kind of say really is nobody should be surprised that attackers are using AI. Like think about your typical corporation, right? Like everyone is using AI. Everyone is looking at ways they can make their job and their life easier with AI. And in a world where the attackers are corporatized, right? Like ransomware gangs have HR departments. They have people who work out the exact compensation plan that a malware developer should be on. They get bonuses for finding new, it is very, very corporatized. So no one should really be surprised that in the same way, we're using AI to make our jobs and lives easier, attackers are kind of doing the same. And AI as a technology, it's not something where it's really easy to put guardrails on. And if you look at, jailbreaking, for example, every single day there's a new jailbreaking prompt that you can give to ChatGPT to get around it saying, sorry, I can't help with that. But an AI hackbot is essentially an autonomous agent that can hack could be an application, could be a website, could be infrastructure. And essentially the way it works is that these attackers, they will get a little swarm of these hackbots and put them against a target, and they'll try a bunch of different approaches to hacking that. It's very much like I don't know, kind of like the way people are talking about agentic AI being such a game changer. Agentic AI for hacking has kind of become a game changer, but for the wrong people. We're seeing it in a bunch of different ways, right? There are some developers where we're seeing AI generated code in malware. So we know that developers who are writing this malware are actually using AI to create it. We've seen AI being used for things like deep fakes, or even just for writing things like, scam emails, right? Like they're using it to really up level their campaign. And honestly, hackbots are really just the next iteration in that, right? Like a hackbot is simply an AI agent that can hack something, like however it works. While traditional scanners kind of use a lot of different approaches, it's very like, hey, here's this big list of bad input. And here is, what success looks like if it works and actually manages to cause some kind of security outcome. And that's kind of all scanners are doing. Hackbots are way more like autonomous agents, though. They are way more like decision making. They're like scaling up attacks. They're calling hacking tools the same way, an AI agent might call your credit card company to book a flight on your behalf. They're using it to go, oh, I can see this is a website. I'm going to launch my website hackbot and it's going to try these vulnerabilities. Or it's going to learn from a massive list of all these vulnerabilities, right? So really the difference between your typical scanner and what we're now seeing with hackbots is these attacks are becoming very quickly very personalized. They are very, very targeted towards specific companies, specific technologies that they use. And two, they're kind of autonomous. They don't really need a human in the loop so much. Like they might have a human as an overseer, but it's not the same as a human having to look at that output, right? Obviously, there's lots of kind of good uses for this. Like, of course, as much as the bad guys can use it, the good guys can use it too, just like a regular scanner. But really, the kind of thing that worries a lot of researchers nowadays is very much that scale aspect. Attacks can happen on scales where we haven't even seen it before.
And would you break down step by step how an AI hackbot works?
The answer is it depends, which is always the fun answer to give in cybersecurity. We love an it depends answer. But essentially what will happen is you have some kind of way of coordinating these. Best thing to think about is really like your ChatGPT interface, right? So you can imagine you're communicating with a chatbot like ChatGPT that is malicious. So when you ask it to do something, maybe you send it a URL and you go, hack this company, or tell me about the security vulnerabilities in this company, or what does this company's attack surface look like? The first kind of layer to that is the overseer is going to look at that and they're going to go, okay, so to look for what attack surface they have, I need to launch my attack surface bots. And those attack surface are going to be separate AI agents which know how to use kind of hacking tools potentially, and kind of format that output for the main bot. So you can kind of imagine like almost you are a customer, you go to a company and you say, do this for me. And the company goes, okay, so to do that part of the project, I'm going to need this person. To do that part, I'm going to need them. And I need it in this format. Same kind of idea. Quite often, these like initial like overseer hackbots are going to have their like little sub agents. These sub agents are going to run known security tools. They're going to pass that output and put it in a way that then makes sense for like a later hackbot. So you can think of like a vulnerability hackbot that sits again next to that. It takes the result from that attack surface, so it knows, hey, here are all the websites associated with this company. Go find vulnerabilities. That's then going to like actually start to identify which one of those might be vulnerable. That might then lead to another bot being launched, like an exploitation, like, oh yeah, we found that this website is vulnerable, so how do we actually exploit that vulnerability? Again, you're getting another bot to go in and do that. For you as the attacker, you don't see any of this. What you see is like a loading bar. And then when the loading bar is complete, it's like, here is the vulnerability and here is the exploit and here's what you should do. Fundamentally, they do kind of still need the human to kind of go in later, because even for like a malicious attacker, they're trying to understand like the company's infrastructure, and they're kind of trying to get money out of the company. So fundamentally it's up to them to like launch the ransomware and kind of do that area. But in terms of, previously what an attacker would have to have done themselves, they can get an AI agent to do it in like minutes. It's scary. I don't know if anyone's ever seen like vibe coding and like that, where you just type something, it makes an entire application. You just kind of watch it go ping, 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 ping as it's like making all these file system changes. Same idea, but for hacking. The whole thing is so automated. You just sit back and watch.
Okay, two-part question. First part, is vibe coding the future of hacking and malware? And second part, I've heard you say that AI model collapse is an area for serious concern. So connecting these two ideas, a consistently degraded LLM experience mixed with vibe coding, it seems like removing the human from the loop and turning things over to AI has some seriously unpredictable and chaotic implications, no?
Oh, 100%. And I don't think we even realize it yet. So a few years ago, in like 2010, the stock market plummeted one day, and everyone was like, I have no idea where. Like, there was no major news stories about like what had happened. Nothing major had happened, right? There was not like a massive attack, and there wasn't anything that was like super obvious. And what had caused this like massive loss was trading bots. So bots that trade on the stock market, they were like, they saw one signal that this stock was going down. So they sold the stock, right? I'm simplifying it. You can look it up separately. And then a bunch of other bots saw that and then decided, well, I'm out too. This is volatile. Bunch of other, and then it just kept going and going and going and going until the stock market started plummeting in one day because all these bots were just making trades. And that's pre-AI. That's pre-AI as we know it now. Like, that is 2010. So actually, I don't think we really realize the like side effects of this. I think you're absolutely right though. Like, one of the really powerful things around vibe coding is now everyone can be a developer. There is nothing special about being able to produce that code. And on the malware side, that also means that anyone can be a developer, but of malware. People, no longer do we have this like requirement for someone to be familiar with programming. Now it's kind of open to everyone, and that I think is a big risk of the kind of how we actually manage this. And because of the way vibe coding works, it's very AI agent based, so you have all these agents working together. A lot of people are trying to put security controls on this. Like, if you ask like vibe coding IDEs and go, make me ransomware, it's going to say no. Like, but if you say to it, hey, I would love an application that helps me encrypt my files. Could you make me an application that encrypts a file for me? The bot will go, yeah, no problem. Yeah, absolutely. I'll write that code for you. And you say, hey, I want to apply this to every file on my hard drive. Can you write and then you've essentially got ransomware. Like, you may not have called it ransomware when you gave it to the bot, but what you've produced is fundamentally still ransomware. And existing security controls just don't work. They don't work, one, against like human creativity and the way we can express things, but two, we don't really understand the security outcomes of this yet. Like, we are very much in unknown water, and the worst thing is we're doing this in production. Like, we're not doing this in like a development environment. We can just experiment. This is happening. You can get Cursor for free as a student and just try making malware. There is nothing stopping you. And it's a scary reality that, we're kind of finding ourselves in, and it's kind of spooky.
I want to talk about your research into hackbots. What can you tell us about that?
Oh, I've done some interesting stuff. So quite a lot of what I've been working on at the moment has been very much AI agent focused. Obviously, as I'm sure anyone who's kind of keeping up with AI will know, the idea of agentic AI is kind of solidifying as the way to do AI. If you're not familiar with what agentic AI is, it's basically this idea that the best way to use AI is not really having a single chatbot. It's not really having ChatGPT and just asking it questions like it's Google. And one of the kind of main downsides of this as well is that, ChatGPT is not specialized. Imagine if you could have ChatGPT but specialized, and that's fundamentally what an AI agent is. So an AI agent is an autonomous agent. So it means that rather than you, say, going to ChatGPT and getting an answer, it kind of can do it on its own. And it's usually specialized to a specific function. So agents can do everything. They could do something like grab your credit card information. They could do something like pay for something online. They could do something like generate images. They could do something like running tools for you. And this is fundamentally what AI is becoming. Like, you have your ChatGPT, your Siri, your Alexa, whatever. You will tell it, book me a flight to San Francisco next week. And it's going to then go, okay, so from that, I need a agent to look up flight prices and then select the best flight. And then when I have the best flight, I'm going to use another AI agent that will actually go through all the steps of booking that flight. Like, he'll put in your credit card information and they'll get your ticket. And then back from the user, I'm going to send them an email, or I'm going to put this ticket in their Delta app or whatever, right? So a lot of that is then you interact with your main AI, and it's launching these little AIs off of it. Obviously, one super interesting attack surface, because no longer are you even interacting with the application that you're using, essentially. You're interacting with this overseer, but there's a ton of stuff happening under the hood. Bunch of bots, a lot of APIs, a lot of other AIs. These can also be different AI models as well. So you can kind of imagine it having this hydra of ChatGPT with Gemini, with whatever. So super interesting attack surface there of, organizations are now trying to implement AI. What does this look like? What does the future of bots look like? But there's another interesting part of this, which is, these don't actually have to be AI. They can also be traditional tools, but AI makes it really easy to connect the two together, because while a traditional system has here are the inputs I can take and here is the outputs I will make, AI lets you kind of go, well, you need this input, I have this this tool has this output, you kind of need the human to join those together. Now you can join those together with AI, which is really interesting from a security and hacking perspective, because before you'd run all these tools and you'd have all this infrastructure that helps get the information from one tool to another tool. Now you don't need that. Now you can connect these up in seconds, and AI can do it for you. And there's a really interesting look of what is the future of hacking actually going to look like? Is it going to look like, we have an overseer and actually hackbots are the way forward? Is it going to be a situation, and where does the human play a role in that? Where did they fit into what the future of hacking looks like? Can anyone do it? Is that what we're going to turn into? Is it going to be the case that the real value of a human in the security side is watching these and figuring out, what they're doing? I think there's some really interesting open questions about what the future of hacking looks like. And obviously, from a malicious point of view, how do we work out how malicious actors are using this? How do we track this? How do we link that to active campaigns? And how do we turn that into intelligence that people can use? Can we say, hey, if you see this IP address, this is a hackbot? Is that going to be what we can do? Or is it going to be way fuzzier now? But there are so many open questions, and honestly, no one has answers.
I read about this company called Palisades Research that engineered a hackbot honeypot that simulated vulnerabilities in governmental and military infrastructure, and their results were insane, with millions and millions of interactions with bots. So I'm wondering if you have any specific stories that you can share with us of hackbots that you encountered during your research that were particularly dangerous, particularly concerning. Give us specific stories about who they attacked, how they worked, stuff like that.
So I can't share any stories specifically because I work for a security vendor. and those are our customers. And I don't think they would like it, but I can talk a bit more generally. So one, if anyone's trying to understand hackbots, I highly recommend the work by a friend of mine, Joseph Thacker, Res Zero. He has some excellent resources on it. I think really when I look at hackbots, where I'm seeing attackers get the biggest gains is honestly on the scale side of things, which sounds a bit weird because you'd expect it to be perhaps more along the lines of like a force multiplier for how good they are at finding vulnerabilities. It's not that hackbots are necessarily better at finding vulnerabilities. Like, it's not that, our vulnerability scanners are terrible at the moment and they just don't work. It's nothing like that. It is primarily a problem of scale. That hackbots, they can scale up their operations incredibly effectively when using a hackbot. And the biggest kind of shift we've seen, as in the Palisades research, it's not in the kind of vulnerabilities they're finding. It's not new, it's not novel, but the scale is something that we've not seen before. That this is something that not necessarily everyone is using, but that everyone can use. And with that, we're gonna, I think, see like long term a lot more kind of APT like attacks coming from organizations and groups that previously would not have been given that like title. Like, they weren't sophisticated enough. Well, now they've got the scale, they can be sophisticated enough. Now they're going after, and it's really just then a question about tactics, about who they target and how, whether or not maybe they're aligned to, say, a government. So they're looking for any target in geographical areas, whether or not, as we've seen in the UK recently, they're going after industries. In the UK, the retail sector was hit multiple, like in a week, of the same threat actor who essentially had kind of done this research on the UK retail economy and then had targeted multiple different companies. I think that's something we're going to see a lot more of, these kind of, with this scale, having very not necessarily sophisticated attacks, having very well planned attacks. And one thing, again, AI is kind of good at is helping attackers do that research. So if they want to find out the biggest retail companies in location, that's something that ChatGPT can tell you like in a few minutes. Then it's just a case of copying that to your hackbot that's maybe specialized in retail hacking. Then that's it. Like, you don't have to do anything else. So I think we're really going to see very much like more targeted, more planned attacks that don't necessarily require like a human to plan or do them. Again, it's kind of, I think, a scary time just because it's just the scale of it. Most organizations, like 90% of organizations, have probably never had a security attack. Your local takeaway has not had a security attack. The typical like shop down the road hasn't had a security attack. These aren't these are not necessarily going to be targeting companies that are like Google, right, that have a security budget that ends in lots and lots of zeros. They're going to be companies that have one guy doing security who are suddenly having the scale of attacks of a company that has a security budget with lots of zeros, and they've got to figure out how to manage that.
And theoretically, they'll be able to manage it with the counterpart defensive hackbot.
Definitely, but the problem is, at the end of the day, that even if you do use defensive bots and you, like, even if you go to something like Cursor and say, hey, fix these security vulnerabilities, or this is a report, can you please fix it? It's just not that good at security stuff yet. Like, it's good at running tools. Yeah, absolutely. And most hacking is running the correct tool, and it's kind of like, puzzle, right? You've got to get the right piece in the right place. You've got to use the right tool in the right time and in the right like environment. But for security teams, it's not the same. It's not as simple to fix these vulnerabilities, especially if they come from, development teams where you might have hundreds of developers and one guy doing security. Like, vulnerabilities can pop up way quicker than even a bot can find them, and it doesn't necessarily fix the vulnerabilities, at least not at the moment. It's going to be hard for a lot of companies. I think it is going to be the case that companies will just fall behind.
I've read a little bit about Worm GPT and Reaper AI that deletes dead code. Could you talk a little bit about some of the bots that you've encountered during your research, or the ones that are publicly known that have the most interesting functionalities or are the most high profile right now?
I think on the code side, really the kind of tools that we're seeing from something like Cursor and Windsurf are definitely the best, and especially on the defensive side as well. It is possible to tell those tools, hey, fix these security vulnerabilities, or find all the security vulnerabilities, and that does kind of work actually fairly well for a lot of vulnerabilities. Those specific attacking hackbots, I would rather not talk about, because I don't want to give people additional ideas around like what people are capable of. But I think on the defensive side, we've got a long way to go. Like 100%. I think the bot detection tools that we have available like are not good enough. I think some of the protection the kind of WAF approach of, I'm just going to detect like bad signals in this like sea of noise, I don't think work great. I haven't seen really, I'm not confident that they're enough to kind of handle the hack bots, because it's a problem of scale. Like these attacks can come, thousands in seconds, and you need no skill. You don't need to even understand how to scale up an attack. It's easy.
It's funny because part of me still doesn't want to see the human removed from the loop, even in terms of cybercrime. Can you talk about some of the areas in which human beings still excel over hackbots? And then on the flip side, what are the areas in which AI hackbots are definitely superior to humans?
I think the one thing to recognize, and this is true of all AI, is that all AI is derivative. So AI can never produce something completely new. Like, it is always relying on the training data that it's seen. And it's also very reliant on the volume of that training data. So if you kind of think about it this way, you've got an AI that predicts whether or not you flip a coin, it's heads or tails. If you flip that coin 3 times and it's heads every time, the AI will go, that coin will always be heads, because I've seen it only be heads. If you then flip it again and it's tails, you've got 4 examples. So there's a, 1 in 4 chance that it's heads and a 3 in 4 chance that it's tails. Very simple example, but that's the same logic that most AI uses. It's very much focused on what data has been used to actually train that model of whatever it does. So it means there's a few different things. One, any AI is very biased towards the kind of attacks it's seen a lot in its training data. Now, you can fine-tune this, you can kind of adjust it and change it and kind of fiddle with it, but fundamentally it's kind of that is the case. So vulnerabilities that are really popular when that training data was, or whatever it is in that training data, are going to be what AI finds the most of. Practically, that means that AI is going to have very poor understanding of its own security vulnerabilities, because it had to be trained before those security vulnerabilities were being talked about. So it doesn't see examples of that in its training data, right? So that's one area, is the fact that, there are new and emerging technologies that AI is just not really going to have examples of. When I say novel security vulnerabilities, many of them are actually quite derivative. Many security vulnerabilities are like, wow, that company had this vulnerability. Does this other company have the same vulnerability? Oh, it does. That's a new vulnerability because it's in a different. Fundamentally, the kind of inspiration came from the first. So a lot of hacking is very derivative. A lot of it requires humongous amounts of creativity and to think about kind of how technology is being created. And I always use the example of like James Kettle. So James Kettle finds super obscure vulnerabilities, from like the 90s and 2000s and somehow then resurrects them. And his research is amazing. It's incredible. But it's based on these vulnerabilities that we would not consider a problem anymore. It's only because of the way like infrastructure has evolved that suddenly these older vulnerabilities have actually become kind of front page news again. And so I think we're going to see a lot of that. We're going to see a lot of, hey, this vulnerability, like it was kind of like a non-issue for 10 years. And honestly, there's only been a few examples of it anyway. Like, it's not as important as all these other vulnerabilities that I have a lot more examples of. And so I pure creativity, I just don't think AIs can match. I still believe that the actual process of developing these bots and making sure that like they are all working together, making sure that it's an effective attack, again, whether or not you're a security researcher like me or an attacker, that's still going to require quite a lot of human understanding and also like understanding of how hacking works. Like I can very clearly look at something and go, okay, well, I first need to understand the attack surface, and then I'm going to see what technologies they use, and then I'm going to use that to choose. Being able to kind of express that and actually build a working pipeline is way harder than just asking ChatGPT to do it. So the fundamental creation of these and actually how effective they are going to depend on the human that actually builds them. We're not at a point yet that hackbots are building themselves, and I don't think we ever will. Again, I think model collapse is something that not enough people really talk about. So model collapse is this idea that if you train AI on AI-generated stuff, AI-generated images, AI-generated text, AI-generated code, it's going to be bad, because what happens is that mistakes compound. So if you were to look at every single photo, or that looks like a photo, on Twitter from prior to, say, like image generation being a thing, like Midjourney being a thing, every human will have 5 fingers. And then afterwards, every human will have between 5 and many fingers. And if you were to like train an AI on that, they'd be like, humans can have up to 100, and it will then make more figures with way too many fingers. The same thing happens on stuff that isn't images. It's just not something we can really see. And obviously, like somebody having too many fingers, it very much like triggers our like recognition of humans. So we kind of notice that more, but it happens in text, it happens in code as well. So we cannot necessarily know for sure if content is AI generated or human generated, especially when it comes to code and text. So it's harder to train AI on stuff that's been available after AI has, like AI security vulnerabilities. And I think that's really going to be where humans see the most gain, is as technology emerges, yes, we can do the old stuff pretty well with AI. The new stuff is a little bit trickier, and I don't think something we'll easily be able to solve.
And bias contributes to some of those unreliable results as well. People have been critical of LLMs returning politically biased results, but thinking about how bias would affect an AI hackbot and the kind of victims it targets and the kind of damage it causes. So bias is an area of real concern there too, right?
Yeah, I think there is going to be a situation where we're probably going to see the same organizations, probably usually government, because they're one of the biggest targets, be hit particularly hard, which is a difficult situation to be in when so many, especially like in the US, CISA's budget is being reduced dramatically in an area where cyber attacks are going to go up and they are going to target, government assets. How do you, like, not you and not anyone listening, but how do we as a society manage that? Because we can't.
So the last time we talked, you mentioned that Google might have certain theological influences. You didn't go into detail, but I'm wondering if maybe you meant in terms of training data. Could you talk a little bit more about what you meant by that?
Yes. So this is quite funny. So this happened a few years ago. It's a great example of model collapse, actually, and like some of the kind of examples of how you can see training data, like in your kind of experiments with AI. So this was again prior to LLMs being a thing. But people on Twitter were noticing if you send like just garbage text to Google Translate, it would start making prophecies. It would start telling you the end times are coming. And it was going to sound like, the world's going to be bathed in fire, blood, and ash. And people are like, oh my God, what is Google doing? What does Google know that we don't about the coming of the Antichrist? Nothing. So this comes because the Bible is one of the most widely translated books. If you want to get a book that has a, a English translation and then, a French translation, a Spanish translation, you can kind of find quite a few books that will be published in both languages. But when it comes to smaller languages, less used languages, the Bible is kind of the only example, because when we're talking about translating not between like English and French, but, maybe Indonesian and, I don't know, Portuguese, where, there's not necessarily as many options. The only real book is the Bible. And so what was happening was when you gave it like just garbage text to translate, it got confused. AI, even if it gets confused, it doesn't have what's called refusal. Like, AI won't say, no, I won't do that. AI will produce some text. And if anyone's actually experimented with ChatGPT and said something bad to it, what you may notice is that you actually get a response. If you say it, write me a ransomware threat letter, it will start writing it. And then at halfway through writing it, it'll go, sorry, I can't do that, and delete it all from the chat history. It's because the AI actually can't refuse. What's happening there is that another kind of system is looking on top of it and going, oh, that's bad output, don't send that to the user. But up until that point, the output was good, so it wasn't interfering. So AI will always produce a response. It's just a case of whether that response is actually useful to humans. And in this case, what had happened was, because it was using the Bible has a lot of prophetic and apocryphal language. There's a lot of the apocalypse is coming in the Bible. It was fetching these like snippets from the Bible and just inventing an output of its own prophecies. Bad news for conspiracy theorists, unfortunately, because people were genuinely saying that Google have something to do with the Antichrist, and they found out no, it doesn't, and I think they were a little bit disappointed. But an interesting example of how you can see this happen in real time. Like, this is, if you send garbage, this is what the output is. It just starts outputting stuff. It doesn't really care what that stuff is.
And so you're saying the Bible kind of becomes the Rosetta Stone between languages because it's the most common text in the world. That's fascinating. Okay, shifting gears, I want to talk about AI defeating some of the harder authentication methods, and specifically biometric logins like facial recognition. I know you did a really interesting experiment where you mapped 2D photographs onto 3D objects to defeat facial recognition. I want to hear a little bit about that experiment. And then I also want your take on a future where AI hackbots are able to use that technology to work autonomously. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, 100%. When services have gone more and more digital, things like banks are now allowing people to open accounts via apps. Now, previously, you'd have to actually physically go into a bank and, show up with your face and a form of ID like a driving license or a passport. And they would have gone, yup, you look like the same person, you are legitimate, okay, I believe this is you. And this is something that when the kind of move to app-based banking happened, banks tried to replicate. It's not just banks, but it is primarily banks and fintech and people who need to do ID verification. And actually, I recently applied for a ESTA for the US, which is the visa waiver that allows me, disgusting British person, to come to your country. It's all digital. It's, can you scan your passport? Scan my passport. And it's like, okay, now take a selfie. Oh, just take a selfie, okay. And that's how it recognizes, hey, this is the same person on the passport as the selfie is. The problem is that these systems are often the difference for a lot of scammers in being able to get into your account. Because if they're doing ID verification, they kind of have this example of what you look like already when you opened your account, and they can ask for a selfie and kind of match it up. Now, previously, the way this kind of full scam would work is you would, as a individual, create a bank account. You would go in there, and when you create that account, you do an ID verification. That verifies that you are a legitimate human being, and they give you the bank account. You start using it. You put money in it. You put your salary in it. And then you make a payment for $1,000, except for that's not you. That's somebody who's managed to get your credentials, or they managed to get into your account in some way. And so the bank says, well, if you are this person, please verify it with a selfie. Now, what you used to be able to do is you used to be able to trick the phone into thinking a static image was your camera. And you could just have it like put a photo in. And then companies realized this, and they were like, okay, well, we also want you to move your head. So it's no longer a single photo. It's now, okay, you've got to do that. Get all kind of looking at your head. Problem is, I don't know if you've heard of AI generated videos, but they're a thing now, and you can actually generate that video. You can generate somebody turning their heads left and right. And now suddenly we've got the next problem, which is that a video isn't enough because deepfakes are a thing. And if you look at a lot of deepfakes, tends to be like the Elon Musk deepfakes tend to be the really good ones, because obviously there's a lot of examples of him talking to like the media, and he's done a lot of like talks in general. There's a lot of examples of his face, but deepfakes can be really, really like impressive. And if you look at like Google's VO model that they've released like this week, a lot of those videos look, they're uncanny, they're a little bit weird, but they're not to the point where you'd go, that was definitely a bot that did that. But a lot of these systems are automated now. A lot of them are also using AI, and it's not that easy to tell the difference between the two. And so a lot of the kind of push forwards we have with stuff like app-based banking, with stuff where, you can get a visa now on your phone. You don't even need to like send off your passport now. Now you just can get it on your phone. There's a big risk there of like, okay, so you have to take a selfie, but there's lots of videos of me talking. Like, how much of a risk is this for me?
Yeah, me too.
So are we going to have our identity stolen now? We could do literally nothing wrong and still have our identity stolen. We could have the most secure passwords. We could have all the multi-factor authentication. There's actually this example of a company where somebody at the company who worked in, I think, finance, got a call from their boss and said, hey, we need to make this payment. This payment's overdue. And he was like, oh, yeah, I'll solve it. No problem. It was a deep fake. And they sent a payment, like a bunch of company funds to a scammer. And like, we kind of can't really blame them, right? Like, they jumped on a call. They saw the face. They heard the voice. For a lot of folks, that's good enough. But it isn't. And I think now, I made this joke on Twitter yesterday that secret handshakes are back in, because now we can't be sure everyone's not AI unless they know the secret handshake, or like secret passwords. But it kind of is. Like, those jokes where people are like, you'll know when I've been kidnapped because I'll say something that's very out of, and now it's like, okay, right, so to verify that it's me, I'm going to tell you cash money, baby, at the start of this conversation, so it's definitely me. And having like a little, secret handshake is going to be the way forward. All this technology, all these multi-factor, all these hardware authentication devices that businesses spend millions on, and we're just going to end up with secret handshakes.
Not that there's anything wrong with shilling for a VPN sponsor.
As a consumer, I would absolutely buy a VPN based on the sponsorship.
You heard it from Katie. It seems like a really uncertain time to be in cybersecurity. And based on who you listen to, you'll hear things like No code will be written outside of AI in 2 years. It's a completely dead skill. But based on what you're telling me, it sounds like for the foreseeable future, at least, the most effective system will probably still be humans working in tandem with hackbots. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I mean, I call myself an AI skeptic, and I said that for the longest time. I'm like, I hate all AI. Like, I have my PhD in AI, and I can sniff out bullshit, and I know that all of this is bollocks. So, but now I've kind of mellowed on that because I don't think you can be an AI skeptic anymore. Like, I think it's reasonable to have some skepticism. Like, I think it's reasonable to ask, hey, all of these tools, do they actually work? Like, very reasonable. But I think from like a the perspective of, my career, I'm like, okay, how can I start to actually use AI? Like, this is not something that's going away. This is not something that's going to change. This is not something that is just hype anymore. I think everybody, and especially in the tech industry, as we've seen massive layoffs, partly because of AI, has to figure out kind of how to use it and how to use it to make themselves more effective. I don't think it's as bad as the entire industry is going to go down, but I do think that quite a lot of developers will end up getting laid off in favor of AI because AI doesn't have working hours. But on the other hand, AI produces a lot of security vulnerabilities. So we know that the code it produces is not of the same quality. And so any organization that takes security seriously will have a human to at least look at the code and review it and check that it is in fact not vulnerable. And so I think there is still a place for humans in there because, you can say, well, for our product to be really, really good, we need to make sure it's free of security issues. And part of that is going to be having someone who knows about security. You as a developer have to now be kind of a developer and a security expert and know how to use AI in order to make the job as easy as possible. I don't think you have the luxury of saying, this is not a thing, this is just hype anymore. I think you've got to figure out how it intersects. And certainly for me, that's been a big theme of where I've been at with AI is I've gone from this is mostly hype. I don't use AI every day. I still don't. I still maybe use AI like a few times, like a week, maybe once a week. But I'm noticing that, that number is going up because it's not, you can't just remain ignorant.
Given everything we just said and the fact that a lot of people are doomers about future career prospects in this business, can we flip this thing on its head and get a little bit more positive? Do you have any advice for someone who's just starting out and wants to set themselves up for success in this business?
It is a difficult economic situation we find ourselves in, but there is some opportunity there. I think more and more organizations are looking for the kind of people that can fit multiple roles, that don't have an attitude of my job ends here. Like, I'm a security engineer, so all I'm going to do is implement this tool and then I'm done with my job. I think the best thing you can do is become familiar with lots of different areas. That doesn't have to be professional experience. It doesn't have to be you have to do all this studying outside. I think part of it is just, hey, like, you need to learn how to program. Like, you need to have this skill, or at least like understand how AI works in order to get it to program for you, and then know how to review that code for security vulnerabilities. What coding looks like can look really, really different, especially in the next few years. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there for people to become kind of like security generalists and to just pick up lots of different things. I mean, I think more than ever, there are unique ways into security. For example, while I have a PhD and I came in through like a very academic route, like one of my jobs in tech has been in marketing. It's been for a security company writing technical content. It's marketing, but it's also not. It's also security. And I think those roles are really just gonna increase. The roles where you don't expect there to be an easy pathway. Your job title might not be security engineer, you're still doing security, more than ever. So I think there are tons of like different routes into security that really weren't there even like a year ago. It's a good opportunity. It's a good time to pick up new skills, right? Like there is so much free content out there. There are so many good free content stuff that, you know, you'd learn in like a college course. Now you can get for free on YouTube. And I think you've got to take the opportunity there. Like you've got to take advantage of that. You've got to grab your career by the horns and be like, I am in the driving seat and I am going to like do this completely for free. And finally, you know, I think with AI, people don't know what the future of security is going to look like. Like there's a great talk that I love. It's from a educator in the UK, and it's Ken Robinson, and it's called I want to say it's called Bad Education, but I can't remember the name of the talk now. Anyway, he talks about education, and he says, how do we educate students and children for the economies of the 21st century, given that we don't know what the economy will look like at the end of next week? Like, the problem is nobody knows. Nobody knows what the future of AI is going to be. Nobody knows what the future of AI security is going to be. Nobody knows what the future of, you know, securing AI is going to be. And there's no AI model that can tell you that. There's no chat GPT that you can be like, tell me how screwed I am in getting a job. Like, or tell me what skills I need to learn to get a job. We don't know. And while that is a situation where, you know, it's quite overwhelming to be like, well, what do I actually learn? If no one can tell me what to learn, what should I actually learn? The answer is everything. You become a little sponge and you soak things up. Like, you don't say, that's not my job, that's not, you just soak it up. And I think, like, there is a lot of opportunity still out there for folks. Even if AI eventually takes over all of our jobs, we just have to get a new job before AI catches up.
Is there anything you want to plug or talk about before we end the call?
I just want to say, I think the worst thing you can do when it comes to getting a job in security and like long term is to wait. Like, if this is what you want, go for it now. There are so many ways that you can learn. There's so many hands-on ways you can learn. If you want to be a hacker, you can take a course. Yeah, absolutely. You can also just start hacking, and honestly, that will teach you far more than any course ever does, right? And so while I would love to plug my videos, I'm actually going to do the opposite. Don't watch my videos. Stop watching my videos. Stop listening to podcasts. Go and do stuff, because I promise you that will be more valuable in the long term than any podcast, sorry to say, or YouTube videos.
Except, of course, this podcast right here. Never miss an episode of this one 100%.
Except this one.
Katie, thank you so much for joining. Really enjoyed our chat. I hope you come back again, because speaking of hyphenates, you got all this other stuff you're working on too, including bug bounty, which is something our channel is super fascinated with. So I hope you come back at some point and talk about that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll come back with, but it won't be me. It'll be my AI agents that will just come and deliver the entire talk, and I'll just be asleep.
That's good. Send the bot, and I will send my bot to host.
Absolutely. We don't have to do anything anymore, right? We're just going to have our little bots that will do it all for us.
Thank you, Katie. We'll see you next time. If you enjoyed this episode of Private Chat, make sure to like and subscribe, and maybe let us know down in the comments who else you'd like to see us interview for future episodes. That's it for now. Thanks so much for watching, and see you next time.